Hello, I'm Chantal Westerman. One of the best parts of the Wisdom workshops are the up-close and personal conversations with the leading practitioners and authors in the holistic field. This gives all of us an opportunity to know these people just a little bit better. So join me as they share their wisdom with us. Your book draws me so much to your work. But first I want to know a little bit about you. Bree Maya. Bree's not your first name.
Bree's an honorific for Brahmacharini, which means Vedic monk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Does it specifically mean female Vedic monk?
Brahmacharini is female monk and Brahmachari is male monk. Yeah. So
it's so interesting that here in my part of the country, in my part of the world, the idea of a female monk is not even considered.
It's unusual. We've had nuns, though.
Yes.
In my part of the country, in the world, it's even more unusual until now to have Vedic monks that are women. Yes,
now
of
there
course.
you go. I thought you were going to say we've had Vedic monks.
You know, we've had the Divine Mother, and then we've had a lot of sages who were male, and there was a practical reason for that, Chantal, and that is that the life was one of moving about from place to place with your calabash and your stick. And
where were you born? Tell me just a little bit about your beginnings.
Yes, in British Guyana. With the my grandparents came on the boat with the British colonizers in 1889, and we grew up in British Guyana, 2 generations of us. That's where the tradition, my tradition of being a Brahmin and a Hindu and a Vedic person was maintained, because my great-grandparents, grandfather in particular, was a Vedic priest.
How fortunate for you to live your whole life this way. So many people are just discovering the aspects of healing and spirituality, and you've lived it.
It is fortunate, but we all have our lessons. You know, I had cancer not because I was the most fortunate person. Of course I had it because I was the most fortunate person, but I didn't know that. And the knowing is what makes all the difference in the world about what we have and what we don't have in our life.
Did it take the healing of your cancer?
It took the healing of my cancer to come to where I am today, to reclaim an ancestry that is so ancient. And in my particular lineage of family that came from thousands of years of priests and saints and sages. And when we moved to Guyana, we had the British colonizers and the Dutch colonizers to deal with, and their authority and their way of life. And therefore, much of what was essentially the nativity of my culture was really being washed out, laundered out, methodically, as we know from colonization. And how we kept it and how we reclaimed it later is really an amazing story, Chantal. And it had a lot to do with my early conflict as a person growing up in a tradition that was so big, because that tradition was maintained in the internal home environment of my people and family, but yet we were completely British in the schools and in the school system and in the way we dressed and all of that. So it was a double identity.
It must have been.
So to have moved away from it to come to America to study, I came at the age of 16 to New York to study. And there I found a popular culture, an answer to both problems, the conflict of identity, the conflict of British, Indian,
so many answers.
And it was also the time, a cutting edge time, we may call it, the beginning of the revolution that brings us here today to Wisdom Television and to the path of wisdom, so to speak. that was a phenomenal time. So I moved with those currents when I first came to the U.S. What had happened, though, is it moved me away from my path, my ancestral path, and my knowing of that path and being part of the path. And cancer came, I believe, as a result of the early conflict, which was a political conflict, but more a personal conflict, and then later as moving farther away from the given tradition of my people. That begs a lot of questions, I know.
Your book is a book that so many people are reading today because people want to be healed and people want to heal. One of the things you talk about in your healing process is cognitive memory. I would be so curious to hear you define that for me.
Yes.
I want to understand what cognitive memory is.
Cognitive memory is what we carry within us from life to life to life. And even if we do not believe in reincarnation, we have a given rebirth. Every moment of our life is a rebirth. Mine with cancer. We're more than twice born like a bird is. We are absolutely born in so many times over. Cognitive memory brings us an awareness that we have a memory, a wisdom, that goes beyond the number of physical years in each person's life. And I think, more simply put, rather than cognitive memory or individual memory, it can be understood through our subtle body. We pay so much attention as modern people to our physical body.
And there's a difference. This is my physical body. My subtle body is something different.
My subtle body is why the physical body exists. It is the basis of the physical body. It is completely integrated within that physical body. And when we go to learning, for instance, what is whole or holistic, when we talk about the one consciousness or holistic way of thinking, we are in fact talking about the integration of the subtle body with the physical body.
With the physical. So
and
let
the
me
understanding of that.
Let me understand that. Let's say someone has cancer.
Yes.
It is the physical body that actually gets the cancer. Do you go in search of your subtle body in order to heal the cancer?
All diseases come from within, Chantal. And so the question begs, where exactly does it come from?
Yes.
All diseases come from within. It is through the very inner core of our being, which is in the subtle body, that we are able to be happy or not happy. And when we are not happy, we have an ill-at-ease thing that happens within us. And in the case of cancer, it's a disease that is very deeply rooted. Now, the subtle body is not difficult to understand when we think that we use it, compellingly in our daily, everyday lives. We use our subtle body all the time. Even if we blink, in blinking, we use the subtle body. In breathing, we are definitely using the subtle body because breath is the subtle body. The mind is the subtle body. We can't, anything that we cannot find a physical existence, a physical location for within the body is part of our subtle body.
So it's not our soul, the subtle body.
Yes, it's all the way up to the soul, in that if we look at it in a lateral way, but more in a cyclical way, because life is cyclical, it's circular, it has arcs and curves. There isn't a single straight line in the history of nature. And so when we are looking at the body, we look at it in terms of layers and overlays. The Vedic seers present a very powerful metaphor in which we can see this overlay of material. We have, for instance, the physical body, then the breath, then the mind, then the higher mind, which we call buddhi. And that mind, higher mind, buddhi, is what I refer to as cognitive. And then consciousness. So consciousness is synonymous to the soul.
I see.
It is synonymous to the spirit or to the soul. So we have these wonderful overlays. And we concentrate so much on mind and body. But we need to understand the basis of mind. The basis of mind is in the breath. The basis of the breath is in sound, in cosmic sound, and sound within us, the sound you and I are sharing today.
You know that makes it hard to understand.
Yes. All right.
It's a difficult concept to grasp.
All right.
So I want you to give me, perhaps in the simplest terms, an example of cognitive memory, because when I read about cognitive memory, I thought it meant my childhood. But I understand now it means another life.
It means memories informed from all lives, not just another life. It's also memory in this life. It's our individual memory that we carry, what we ate for breakfast today, and who we were essentially, not in a physical form, but essentially in time past. So we could say that each person is thousands and thousands of years old, and that we have our own resource of wisdom within. And because of that resource of wisdom, we call that our cognitive reservoir or our cognitive memory. Without looking down, Chantal, am I wearing red socks?
No.
What color socks am I wearing?
The kind of gray-brown?
Well, it's intuition, yes? That is cognitive memory. Our grandmothers, I'm not wearing red socks, that's for very sure, and you're absolutely right. Without thinking, you said no. Our grandmothers, if you recall, put the pot on the stove, and they left and went about their daily chores, and then they came back to it at a given time without using a timer, a clock, an alarm. They had an intuitive knowing of when that pot of food would be cooked. Right before an accident, someone goes into a traumatic state, but in that trauma is that revelation, that very momentary revelation which tells us immediately what we have to do, which gear, which shift, whatever, without thinking it. The mind is not operating at that time. The intuition is operating at that time. That intuition is sourced from our cognitive memory.
Our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our earth. We all want to improve ourselves, our lives, and our world. Now, Wisdom Television shows you new ways to a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. At home, at work, at play, around the world. Wisdom explores new ways of living that help you achieve a more balanced life. A better you. Embrace your life. Empower yourself. Enrich your world. Every day with Wisdom Television.
You have a task to perform. Do anything else, do any number of things, occupy your time fully, and yet, if you do not do this task, all your time will have been wasted.
Is part of awareness acknowledging your breath? For example, when I breathe, is that the kind of awareness you're talking about?
Yes. Yes, there's all levels of awareness.
And that's healing.
That is healing. The level of awareness, for instance, if a fire truck goes by and we hear the sound, immediately it registers an alarm. But in a state of awareness where the breath is calm, you're able to not only incorporate that sound into your peaceful environment, inner environment, you're able to also say the prayer for the destination of that truck. You know, it's a very interesting thing. Awareness is not outside of us. We cannot harvest it from outside of us. We can certainly take in information. We can certainly do all of these things. But our search today, and even in the holistic field, is still too mind-laden, too mind-activated, too mind-pursuing. And where the breath comes in is that mind lies on the breath. In fact, it is said in the Vedas that memory rides the waves of breath. So as we begin to breathe deeper and calmer and have more consciousness in that breath, we are able to remember more, not only about today's agenda, but all major, major wonderful things that comes through the intuition.
And then it would be the same thing if I were to be compassionate to someone. It could be because of cognitive memory, where someone was compassionate to me.
It is
many years
because
ago.
you are remembering the essence of compassion within you. It is that you have that well. Each human being has the well of beauty and compassion and fulfillment and absoluteness within the self. And riding on that breath are those memories. There's also the memories that keep us safe from danger, keep us safe from running into the aggressive action or taking on that posture in life. The breath is so wonderful. The first thing I do in a workshop is I tell people, the audience, don't hold your breath, breathe. Because in waiting, that waiting is a difficult word. It's a difficult word because what is waiting is the breath. And we can't afford those waiting. We are always forever in the moment of the breath. And so every opportunity, even if someone is late coming to something we may have planned, is to understand this awareness of bringing it back to the breath. It's one of the most tangible tools we have for the intangible and non-physical body.
When people are at their most uncomfortable, they do hold their breath, don't they?
Absolutely, and if they're not sure of what is happening, if they're expecting, in that expectation, if they're unsure whether they should be there or not, if they're thinking about the family left behind or so many other things they could have been taking care of while you're doing this, and then if you're waiting because someone else is late, well, someone should not dictate the terms of our moment to moment. Whether they're late or not late, we have something to do. It's called the breath, and it's also called the inner sound, and it's about the food of the body, not just food that we eat. There is an interesting thing here, Chantal, about food.
I was going to ask you about food.
Food, breath, and sound are the three ways in which we interact with Mother Nature. They are the ways through which the cosmic rhythms or rhythms of the universe come into our body, feed and feast the tissue, the breath, the vibration within us.
Is there a specific food for a specific body?
No, we wouldn't look at it that way, because we'll go back more to how the native person and the ancients looked at it. The ancients said that if we were to use whatever the seasons provide us, that has not been tampered with, good quality food that is organic and untampered, then the body is responding to that food, and you can eat regardless of body types or blood types. We could eat whatever that season provides us, because the season knows what the body is looking for. There's a wonderful language that communicates between the season, her rhythms, going through the food into the body and feeding tissue.
But how do you apply that today? I mean, as we sit here being busy Baltimore, what you're saying is interesting, but it sounds almost lyrical. It doesn't apply to going to a store and shopping.
It is lyrical, but life is lyrical. Life is
I agree with you there. I think
beautiful
life
and
is
awesome
lyrical.
and lyrical. And if we cut the lyricism out of it, we have a mundane life. And what we do is we eat, but we are not fed. We eat, but we are still hungry. And we eat, but we are not nurtured. And we have to understand that there is a relationship between food and nurturance, that there is a relationship between breath and passion and creativity, that there is a relationship between sound within us and the way that we become awesome ourselves, because we are not going to heal unless we know how awesome and beautiful we are inside. How do we make this choice? Well, in our time, we are very fortunate. There are so many farmers out there doing it for us that are organically oriented, that are able to harvest the food in accord with its nature. And all we have to do is go to these wonderful looking places and pick it up and eat it. What's more sublime than that, other than going back to the land and learning it ourselves? It's not such a tremendous task. Self-awareness is a journey. It's a journey that is vast and complex and phenomenal, and it's taken us thousands and thousands of years to evolve into the matter of wisdom. Yet when we look at this journey as far as its physical terrain and its territorial space is concerned, it's the briefest, most significantly most minute journey we have ever looked at, because it's from here to inside. You know, there is not even a stepping out of the side to enter that journey.
And how do you begin that every day? I mean, what's the first thing you do in the morning?
I breathe, and I chant. And you could chant any chant from your tradition. I chant the Vedic chants, and I breathe in a way that is more a regulated and controlled breath, and understanding the breath, of shifting the breath from the left channel to the right channel, and we can do a bit of that practice in a little bit. to bring the body, to awaken the body in that way, you end up with very much clarity, and also it actually sets the rhythm of your day. On a general basis, I make sure that the environment around me, my space, is wholesome, and that it nourishes me. That if something is an eyesore, it wouldn't be there. And there's a certain way that we have, it's our biorhythm of our own body, where we know instinctively that that bed is better here, I feel better here, where this must have some space between me and that, and my desk should be here. And if we really not throw these things out as, oh, that's just fashion. It's not just fashion. All of fashion comes from a sense of well-being in space. And all of time, the time that we have within each space, comes from, we make more time when our space is organized.
How do you do that breathing you were talking about?
The breath. Space is an important thing, though. It is because of breath. If you have your space aligned in the way that you would like it, your breath is calmer, and your breath is deeper. And the breathing that we can do, let's say that we have a lunar and solar channel. And the Vedic seers tell us that we have 3 main channels in the body of breath, and it runs up the central pathway of our spine. The central column, the left, which is lunar, and the right, which is solar. In the mornings when the sun comes up, our solar breath tends to be active in the body. And what we'd like to do is to balance it out with our lunar breath. One of the ways to check our breath to see that the channels are not blocked is simply by doing this.
Yeah.
If it is blocked, if the left is blocked, for instance, we would want to engage the right armpit. It's an interesting thing. We make a fist. And by the way, the only thing that the fist
This
is
is
good
if
for,
you're left.
If the left breath is blocked in the
Right.
morning, we would want to engage the right armpit, the opposite armpit to the blocked breath.
Because there's a connection.
There's a connection. There is a connection between the brain, the way that the brain works, and the way that the channels are aligned with the brain.
And do you massage it?
No, you simply rest your arm, your fist under your arm. Your fist fits comfortably under your arm because, in fact, that's how it was designed, the armpit.
It actually
Yes,
does.
it's a cosmic
Listen.
relationship. And under there is what we know as marma points, or what is also called acupuncture points.
Yes.
And these points allow the breath to shift over to open the channel that is blocked. When both breaths are working nicely together, the left a little stronger in the morning just to balance out the sun. The left is lunar, so it will balance out the sun. The right at the end of the day, the solar breath should be a little bit higher just to balance out the lunar rhythms of the moon.
It's so fascinating, isn't it, how
it's-
our body works?
It's wonderful. I have seen so many examples, but in particular Jane, who's a woman just last week, I've spoken to Jane. And Jane has had breast cancer. And with following the program of breath and meditation and sound, she was able to rid herself of her cancer and begin to be able to see the dynamic changes every day and growth in her life every day, just through simple breath practices.
And what about you? Do you see the shift in people as people start living their lives this way?
Absolutely, yes, no question about it. You know, we call so many things miraculous. We call landing on the moon miraculous. We call seeing comets miraculous. But the most miraculous thing of all in life is that we have this cosmic anatomy, this spiritual anatomy, which we can access and which gives us so many wonderful, wonderful results almost immediately.
I think another thing that's miraculous is that you and I can have conversations like this. I have so enjoyed talking to you because I find every conversation I have is a lesson.
Chantal, it is truly a wonderful gift that you bring to this, because we need more of these conversations.
Well, we will have more. Thank
it's
you for
wonderful.
being with me today.
You're most welcome.
Thank you
It's
so
a pleasure
much.
to be here. Yeah.